Okay, so it's now time to, after having seen the financial accounting management with SAP ERP, now to focus more the attention of what are the primary process of an organization, and how SAP ERP can support these processes. The first process we want to focus the attention on is the procurement process. So all the activities that enable organization to purchase from external, goods and services that are needed to make the company function and operate in the market. That's what we will see in this module. So we will make first of all an introduction to what procurement means, which are procurement basics concepts and stuff like this. Then we will focus our attention on the procurement process structure, and we will give some hints about procurement organization. So once we have some solid basic about procurement, then we start deep dive about the relationship between procurement and information system. So relating to data management, which relates to procurement process, which are the key procurement objects that are present in SAP ERP, and finally some example of how to manage procurement activities with an ERP system. Let's start with what procurement is about, and which is the scope of procurement in companies. First of all, let's start with the definition. Procurement is procurement. I will use procurement, but similar terms are purchasing or sourcing or supply management. There are all equal, and all means the same stuff, but procurement can be defined as the process which includes all the activities which are able to provide effective and efficient materials and services to the organization. So there are materials and services needed to make operation of the organization function, and procurement is the process that bring this stuff to the organization. Procurement integrates needs of different function, and these are some of the activities that procurement executes. So support the recognition of needs by final user, translates needs into commercially equivalent description, scout for potential supplier, select among these potential suppliers the most suitable source, agrees order contract details in order to bring product and service to the company, follow also the deliver of this product and services, pay supplier, and also receive, inspect, store materials, handle goods, schedule delivery and stuff like this, coordinate in and outbound traffic, and dispose eventual goods that are no more needed by the company. This is an example of a defense company. I can tell the name. This is Boeing, and this is what the procurement department, which is named purchasing department in the company, needs to manage for Boeing marketing, for Boeing production, for Boeing research and development. So under the purchasing scope, there is materials purchasing like aluminum, titanium, composite. There are semi-finished products purchasing like fuselage, fairing and boxes, airframe, wings. There are startup parts to be purchased like cabin, hardware, fasteners and nacelles. But also there are not tangible goods, but also services to be purchased like travel and supply chain services, investment and maintenance, facility management and production, product development, human resource services, corporate services, and all the ICT services like hardware, software licenses, application project and services. So a very heterogeneous, broad and type of goods and services, which are all responsibility of a single function, and that pass through a single process, the procurement process. This is another example of, what can be a procurement scope. This is an example take for a chain producer, and here you see represented the analysis of its spending. Its spending is a classification in terms of value of all that an organization purchases from external supplier. You can see that in these cases, metal components are the larger part of the spending, with 29% of the total value, followed by wire rod, which is an essential part of a chain, with 26, followed by plastic materials in white, 16%, and then we have further categories like aluminum, cables, steel, packaging, non-metal components, services, and labels. We already see that, and services that cover the remaining part of the spending. But you see in this case three what we can call, and we will deep dive on this, purchasing category, sourcing category makes 16, 29, so we have 45, 70% of the spending is covered by just three categories, which are wire rod, metal components, and plastic materials. So this is the procurement scope. The procurement process can cover all this type of category, and of course need to be tailored and need to be designed according to an effective and efficient management of this type of goods and services to be purchased to the company. But I start from this example by with the objective to try to clarify better what a company, an industrial company, can buy. In particular, we can distinguish essentially 5 purchasing categories, which can be typical of an industrial company: raw materials, components, consumables, services, and equipment and machineries. As I told you, these are the main what we call purchasing categories, sourcing categories that can be characterize an industrial company. Raw materials, components, consumables, and services realize what we call operational expenditure, meaning that their cost impact directly the income statement of a firm, because operational expenditure is expenditure which is seen by the company during this year, and so it impacts the income statement of this year, while equipment and machinery is called capital expenditure, because it's usually referred to the asset. It usually impacts the asset of an organization. So in first instance, the balance sheet, and in particular the asset part. Let's start with raw materials. Raw materials are, usually the greater part of the company purchasing portfolio. They are defined on the basis of technical specifications, so it's the production line that asks for particular raw materials like aluminum, like wood, like plastic material, like chemicals, like solvent. It depends, of course, by industry from industry to industry. They are regularly consumed by the production activities, so they are usually regularly bought by a company, and of course their availability and their price is strongly influenced by the demand-supply ratio. So the higher is the demand, the higher is also the price, and of course according to the characteristic of the demand, the supply market for raw material will be organized accordingly. Raw materials are included in the production process of the organization and transform into finished products or semi-finished components. We can distinguish two main types of raw materials. On one side, we have what we call commodities. Commodities are, as you can see here, a class of goods for which there is demand, but which is supply, but for which there is a supply without qualitative differentiator across the market. So a commodity is something which is needed by companies, but is needed not in a differentiated way by from company to company. So they are things of value which can be also of a very large value, but I mean they require uniform quality. So producer realize this in different quality and I mean in same variant, because these are similar requests from different company. I mean example are crude oil, coal, salt, iron ore, copper, aluminium, gold, silver, palladium, wheat, sugar, rice, coffee beans, soya beans, electricity, gas, water, and stuff like this. So these are all things that are needed by companies. But I mean, companies need that in the same way. So electricity, gas, but also sugar, but also crude oil, but also aluminium. Companies request this in the same way, even if they are pharmaceutical company or if they are food company. I mean, they are named commodities because they can be also, I mean, of a relevant value, like for example gold, like for example metals, but they are not differentiated in the request coming from the final market from company to company. Dealing with this type of commodities or derivatives is an highly complicated activity, because as they are indifferentiated from company to companies, I mean, their price is very sensitive to the market trend, and also, I don't know if you are an expert of finance stuff, but the commodities are usually quoted very well in the market. So it means that their price can vary across different time period, also depending on economy condition. So in order to deal with that, so to assure supply continuity, but also to assure a fair price, often specialist buyers are included in company organizational chart in order to deal with the purchasing of these particular goods, and I mean, in order to be able to purchase large quantity at a fair price, and so I mean matching also the efficient needs of a company. On the contrary, we have raw materials which can be called specialties. Specialty, I mean, are defined only as opposite to commodity as unique object or class of object, I mean, that are not available from many suppliers. Are raw materials that are requested specifically in some variants, in some characteristics by companies. The chemical industry is a typical field of specialties, because chemicals, solvent, plastic are always, I mean, raw materials that are requested with specific characteristic and technical properties which differ from company to company. So they are specialties, materials that are not available from many suppliers, but which are requested specifically from companies to single supplier, which I mean provide a new product, a tailored product, but also a service which can be linked to the realization of these raw materials, which needs to be recognized by companies, because I mean suppliers are providing something which is customized and tailor-made for your request. So specialty product companies produce what the customer need and not what their plant can make. So what the plant can make is produced if the raw material is a commodity, while specialty are produced upon customer request and I mean following customer specific needs. Then we have components, parts, and assemblies. So, I mean, of course, they can be standard or specific, but I mean, they are all the goods that companies need to be integrated directly in their product. Like can be touch screen glass for mobile phone, or keyboards for laptops, or I don't know, like tire for automobiles. So these are all components that I mean can be standard, more or less standard, or more or less specific, which influence the operational performance on the final products. And I mean, to satisfy company requests, they need to be specified in very detail from a technical perspective. Of course, also in this case, there are examples of more or less tailor-made or standard components, and I mean, usually the price of this type of parts and assemblies depend on their cost, and I mean how much they are custom made for the company, the volume the company is requiring, and I mean the number of available alternatives that the company is can look for this type of components, part, or assembly. I mean, usually it's not exhaustive, but usually components, part, and assemblies are requested on a supply market, which is related to a mechanical company, mechanical industry, electrical industry, or electronic industry. Usually components part of mechanic parts, electrical parts, or electronic parts, but of course there are also other type of example. Then we have consumables. All I mean, raw materials and components, parts, and assemblies are what we call direct goods, in the sense that they are directly included in the final product. Consumable instead, which are also known as maintenance, repair, and operating supplies, MRO, are purchases which are, I mean, not directly included in the final product, but they are necessary to keep the business running. They can be office block notes, they can be snow tires for sales rep cars, spare parts for production equipment, are all that is not directly related to the product, but is related to make the operation functioning. Can be furniture for office, can be ICT purchasing, so laptop, can be I mean, let's say spare parts from production equipment, can be pen, can be furniture for office and stuff like this. The problem is that consumable, they can have a very extensive assortment, because I mean the span they cover is very large. There is a high degree of specificity, and there is an irregular consumption rate of some of them, like spare parts, and also regular consumption rate of office materials, so very heterogeneous goods. And I mean, user has always influence on the choice of product, because I mean, as there is something that is not related to production but is used by final user for making activities going, I mean, usually often wants to influence the choice. Think about the fact I want to purchase a laptop, and the company proposed me Dell computer while I want a Mac, or mobile phone. The company is proposing me a BlackBerry and I want an iPhone. The company wants to propose me a Bic as a pen and I want a Mont Blanc. So these are type of MRO which are final user sensitive. So they can be influencing their choice, in the purchasing choice by the final user. There is also the need, of course, to manage inventory to avoid overstock, especially for indirect goods, indirect components, which are affecting also production. And of course, because they are final user sensitive, there is the need to define strict procedure for putting purchasing requisition and to buy them. Then, as in the office, in the operational expenditure, we have as final services. Services, of course, are intangible purchasing, which are needed by the company to make their operation functioning very well. And they can be, I mean, very broader, because we can talk about architecture and civil engineering services, like, I mean, we want to build a new plant, or a new building. We want to build a new parking. We want to design a new headquarters and stuff like this. Then we can have machine and plant construction. When you want to design, to build, to introduce new machine, we need to purchase some services related to their design, to their testing and stuff like this. Energy and utilities. like water, electricity, gas, and so on. Logistic and transportation, so managing warehouses and transport goods to the final market. ICT services like storage, data storage, like ICT maintenance, like software, like license and stuff like this. Facility management, like relating to the fact that building needs to be buildings need to be maintained and checked and renew and keep at the same level of quality during the years, but also professional services like safety, quality training, cleaning, or catering and stuff like this. In some cases, services represent up to 25% or more of the organization expenses, and in companies, the statement of work is that template, is that document that helps to define the service scope, the service characteristics. Here you see an example of statement of work. So, for example, this is for the consulting service. Company has this template, and whenever a service is needed, you can fill a document like this when you first describe the service you need, which are the terms of the services, and some option related to the insurance, related to the charges, so the price, or the billing and the payment characteristic of this service. Finally, we have capital expenditure, so equipment and machinery. So, or every time we need to introduce a new asset like a machinery, a plant, an assembly line, whatever you want. This means that you need to purchase what we call a capital asset. So I want the goods installed and also all the related service eventually included in the purchasing. Of course, these are no recurring purchases. This happens when each previous asset has come to the end of its life. And of course, these are very complex purchases to be managed because it is necessary to define and agree performance level, pre-acquisition test on the prototype, and then after sales support, after installation support, and there are also difficulty in defining the true cost of the equipment, because usually we need to calculate what we call the total cost of ownership of an asset. So how does it mean buying these assets from now to the duration of all its life, and different options are available in terms of contract to be signed. Like there are turnkey contracts where prime contractor and subcontractor are present, and there are also contract with service included or excluded. Cross-functional teams can be involved. There are lease versus buy option in terms of payment and ownership of the goods. So this is a type of purchasing which is not easy to be managed and needs to be defined in a separate way as the previous categories. As I told you, raw materials, components and parts, services, MRO, capital goods, and so on represent purchasing categories. But often, in large international groups, this classification is not exhaustive. It's likely that there are local procurement offices in this type of organization dispersed in different geographical regions buying similar type of goods and services. It's likely that companies define what we call purchasing categories. We group products or services that are likely to be purchased from the same set of suppliers using the same approach in all units and countries. So companies group raw materials, components, supply. It's not said that in this way. So that can be a purchasing category including raw materials and also parts and assemblies. But according to their needs and according to the to the similarities that they have in purchasing some of this group, they create this type of purchasing categories. Purchasing categories, which are also named sourcing category, I mean group goods and services purchased from a company which has a similar function, which has similar raw materials and production processes, which have similar specification, and some other trait that could allow them in group in the same category. For example, printers, copper, facsimile machine can be included in a sourcing category. All office materials can be grouped in a single purchasing category named office material. All that is related to, I mean, fleet acquisition for employee can be, I mean, car fleet purchasing. Hotel booking, travel files can be, I mean, travel management. So can realize the purchasing category travel manager. Customer gifts and gadget can also create another purchasing category. Here you see an example. I take back. As we saw from buying, we saw what was in the procurement scope, and the different categories that you saw in the previous three were the purchasing category of buying. I make you another example. This is instead this is no more Boeing, is another company in Italy which manufacture helicopter. Its name Leonardo Helicopters, and this is a defense helicopter for defense and security. And these are the purchasing categories in Leonardo Helicopters. So as you can see here, you have the categories grouping all raw materials and components and parts, which can be named avionic and mission equipments. Then we have engine installation, and we have hydraulics, pneumatics, fuel and mechanical. Then we have systems, then we have interiors, then we have machine parts, then you have metallic raw material, then you have non-metallic raw material, standard parts, structure and sub-assemblies, subcontracting production processes, and training heads. These are, the purchasing categories of Leonardo Helicopters. And here you can see that each category is defined as strategic or non-strategic in terms of production, meaning that if some of this is missing, the production is stuck. This is strategic. Non-strategic is, we need that, but if we don't have it right now, production can still going on. And here you see also the impact on the early spend of the company. So, like for example, avionic and mission equipments accounts for 30% of Leonardo Helicopters yearly spending, so yearly purchasing costs. Here you see another example. This is in manufacturing, a manufacturing organization. Here there are the purchasing categories of this company, like civil goods acquisition, consulting services, facility services, hardware, info provider, legal services, marketing services, meal like catering, like dining and so on like this, medical services, office supply, other. So all that is not grouped in the other category, like then we have travel, training, and stuff like this. So these are the categories of this company. And as you can see here, of course, from SAP ERP, for example, you can extract the order or the invoices made in just 1 year or multiple years, and you can understand how much you spend for each category, how many orders you have put for each category, how many buyers, so people in the procurement department, have been dedicated to manage this type of category, and how many suppliers have been activated for each category. So according to the analysis you want to make on this purchasing category, you can consider different variables. The amount of spending, number of orders, number of buyers, on the number of suppliers.